lightweight division. And it's been very interesting, guys, right? I mean, it's very interesting. 2 weeks ago, headlines everywhere. Absolute talk of the town. Ospinall, Jones, what I would do to fight, and I will do anything to fight. And it was kind of interesting because a week goes in between, and now the only headlines that you could connect Jon Jones with are to Francis Ngannou. And I will admit, that was a bit of a flash in the pan, and that didn't steal the airwaves long, but it still interrupted the cycle. And now, as we come out of that phenomenon, only on the third week, you can't find Jones and Aspinall connected anywhere. There is no demand by the audience. The audience that was hot and heavy and give them what they need and find out whatever you want has passed. And now there's some eyes on Volkov and Gane. And I don't suggest for you Volkov and Gane is the same as Jones and Aspinall. What I'm suggesting for you is Volkov and Gane have a major say and influence on what happens with Aspinall and Jon. So, the most telling, and one thing you will never get from the MMA media is to ask a meaningful question. It just simply will not happen. And when they didn't take the belt off of Tom, you must understand, that's not a conversation that you would need to have. Those words would never be spoken. It couldn't be any clearer within the rules that in the presence of an undisputed champion, there is no interim champion. That couldn't be clearer. And let me give you an example, and you might think, well, they're not all that close. Like, no, they're the exact same. If a guy is the world champion and he fights a challenger and he loses, the challenger is the champion. And they'll make an announcement of that. Bruce Buffer will announce that. And a belt will get put around him. There will be an announcement. There will never be an announcement that this guy is no longer champion. It doesn't need to be said. It's the way the rules are. And I only bring it up because that did not happen here. And the failure for that to execute is for a reason. And I think that that's where a lot of the fun comes in. I think a lot of the fun is trying to identify situations like the one I just did for you, but also trying to guess what that reasoning would be. And I don't think it's overly sophisticated. Within the reign of Tom as interim champion, we saw something we haven't seen before, which is an interim title be defended. And we would have every right to defend that title a second time. In fact, if we have a champion that says, I'm not going to fight, for example, that is the very thing that you would have an interim champion for. And that often gets missed by people. I've heard this in open discussions where people didn't understand. If you have a champion who is healthy, he is simply unwilling. That is the reason you would strip somebody. There isn't another reason that you would. There's other reasons that you could. You have what's known as a closet champion, or you have somebody that's got an injury, but you'd really have to search to find something like that. In fact, the only champion I can ever think of, and this is off the top of my head, but the only champion who we've ever stripped when he had an injury, and Dominic Cruz, it was 3.5 years just by example. His knees just kept hurting, but they kept the belt on him. You show a guy grace, right? When a guy is down, you help him up. The only champion I can think of that we ever stripped due to injury was Yuri Prohaska. But the belief on that injury was that it was career ending. It was a little bit of a different situation. So, if you can't get your healthy champion. He just simply isn't willing. But you are unwilling back to take the belt off him. Okay, fine. Just you keep it. Whatever that is, we'll deal with it because there's a lot of uniques going on there anyway. But we can still get on with it. We got a heavyweight champion right over here. It's the interim heavyweight champion. And an interim heavyweight championship is going to be very sought after and very interesting after Ciryl Gane and Volkov. Ciryl Gane and Aspinall just works. It works. It works to the point that it could have been done 2 years ago. It works to the point that it was attempted to have been done at Madison Square Garden of last year. Tom Aspinall has every right to not give it to Ciryl. What Ciryl did to Tom Aspinall was terrible. And now Tom's got some power and Ciryl like it back and Tom's giving him a swap. But that doesn't last forever, right? I mean, at some point it's equitable. You get even. Now let's go out and do the fight. And Ciryl is a very heavy favorite. I, for the life of me, do not know why. And by the way, I find myself when I speak about Ciryl, it's generally not positive. Ciryl is a handsome guy. He's a very tough guy. Ciryl's got a fine life. I don't mean to be negative towards Ciryl, but I will share with you, nobody gets better at this sport by not doing it. And Ciryl passed up on very big opportunities to go and film a movie that nobody's ever heard of and most likely will never see. But you can't ever get around that. Every actor wants to be an athlete, and every athlete wants to be an actor. There's no way to ever work that out. So now Ciryl's going to come in against largely a mirror image of himself, right? Ciryl does all of his finest work with the kickboxing. Volkov does his finest work with the kickboxing. And I don't completely know how good Volkov is. I just know he's really good, but I don't completely know how good. I mean, he looked his best in his last fight. He's fighting Sergey Pavlich, who you guys anointed the next great thing. I think largely because he was Russian and had blonde hair and you saw Rocky IV. Truly, I really do believe without Rocky IV, you never anointed Sergey Pavlich, but you did. And Volkov went out and didn't even take him serious. Volkov's trainer in between rounds brought him water and a comb. He combed his hair in between rounds. I mean, he was doing marketing. He was doing a spoof, and he was performing. Because he was so unimpressed by your great blonde hope, who he eventually put down. And I'm just sharing with you, the idea of dealing with Volkov on your feet is a pretty tough proposition. The idea of dealing with Ciryl Gane on the feet is a pretty tough proposition. But the idea of dealing with a motivated and forward-moving Volkov, which is what you have, versus a Ciryl who, when given an opportunity, went and did anything else. I mean, that's just what happened. And Ciryl is a 3.25 favorite. Another reason I feel like I can give him a hard time and I don't have to apologize, right? People like him. You guys like him. You even believe in him. But I'm just sharing with you, that's a big stretch. It's a very big stretch. But if Ciryl does come out of that fight, it draws you right into Aspinall, which has been 2 years in the making. If Volkov comes out of that fight, we'd have to wait and see what kind of steam that could have behind it. But if you're Jon Jones, right, you're Team Jones, and you want to keep all the focus and right here on you and Aspinall, it would behoove you if Volkov won. And if Gane wins, well, nobody wants to see Gane and Jones, and I can assure you, as sure as night follows day, that fight will never be booked again. People do want to see Aspinall versus Gane, and that's what makes Gane versus Volkov this weekend so meaningful.